Hello friend, my name is Doombabe and today we are going to be talking about a psychological thriller called Murdered Soul Suspect. Developed by Airtight Games and published by Square Enix in 2014, Murdered Soul Suspect tells the story of Ronan O'Connor, a detective and widower with a marred past that is looking into the series of murders going on in Salem. When he gets into a fight with the serial killer, he is thrown out of a window and shot multiple times in the chest. When he dies, he is told by his late wife that in order for him to move on, he needs to complete his unfinished business in the human world. And that unfinished business is solving the Bell Killer murder case. This was a game that really kept me engaged despite its shortcomings. I really liked how you play as a flawed character, and I don't just mean, playing as a bad boy with a dark past. Because Ronan is he's a very great detective, but he is also very arrogant and he is a hothead, and that's what got him killed in the first place. And he didn't become a detective through firm resolve and hard work and noble beliefs. He got to be a detective because his brother-in-law manipulated the system for him. He's not just a flat Gary Stu. This was something that was apparent in most of the characters. Joy, your medium psychic friend, is narrow-minded and bratty, but it's not without good reason. I personally found a lot of the characters to be believable, despite the obvious fantasy characteristics. And it's not just the main characters that are interesting. Along the way, you're going to come across ghosts that are lingering around because of their unfinished business as well, whether it be due to jealousy from watching a loved one move on, or from not knowing how they died or where their body is. There's someone that you'll be able to talk to, and whether it's a full conversation or a one-liner, you can kind of gain some insight on what their lives were like. Others, you can actually solve problems for them as a sort of area objective. There are also the citizens or tourists in Salem that you can possess and listen to their thoughts, whether they be about the Bell Killer murders or whether it be about the new witch trial exhibit that just opened. Characters aside, the story evolved in a way where the two plot twists completely threw me through a loop. I wasn't expecting either of them, and having such meaningless characters be so important to the story while stringing you along in another direction just felt like good writing. Not because they did it, but because they did it well enough to where a story snob like me completely believed it. I also did like the incorporation of the Salem witch trials into the story. I really only had two complaints about the writing. The first one being it got kind of cliche. I mean, the adult having to team up with the bratty teenager, a ghost with unfinished business, good cop versus bad cop. It's stuff that's been done before. Also, the thoughts of the people you possess start to get very repetitive as you progress through the game. About halfway through the game, that's when it starts. And I'm assuming that's because the writers just thought you wouldn't be possessing as many people due to the novelty of the feature wearing off, but they were wrong. I possessed every single person I came across. I think Murdered Soul Suspect's downfall was the gameplay, and I know that's really bad because this is a video game, but bear with me. While it started out very fun at first with the mystery solving and being able to run through objects, it quickly did get a bit stale. It was a lot of running, a lot of inspecting, and way too much item hunting. While the bottom of the screen will tell you how many pieces of evidence there are in a particular crime scene, there's not really a whole lot of incentive to get every little piece because in a lot of crime scenes, you don't need all of the evidence. A lot of the times you really only need about 3 pieces. So instead of getting all of the pieces, the main focus is to just get the pieces that you need. And while the final couple pieces of evidence can be irritatingly well hidden, you just don't really see the point of going the extra mile for what I can only assume is just an achievement for getting all of the evidence in the game. However, that being said, it isn't just looking at evidence and reading whatever note comes with it. Some pieces of evidence will provide a flashback for you, which is one of your powers as a ghost. Not all ghosts have the same powers, it just depends on what your skills and your talents were when you were alive. Because you're a detective, you can uncover pieces of the past from spirit residue that was left behind through powerful emotions or just importance. You can also teleport, influence the memories of whomever you're possessing, hide in spirit residue left by other ghosts, mess with technology, and run through walls. And because you can walk through objects, that means you can't actually pick anything up, and you need to rely on joy to interact with the human world for you. And because Salem is very superstitious, obviously, a lot of the buildings are sort of blessed, meaning you can't enter them without a door or a window being open. And because you're a part of the spirit world, sort of like in Limbo, there are parts of Old Salem that are left behind as like giant pieces of spirit residue that you have to navigate around. Or they're just straight up blocking your path. I'm assuming this is all in place so you don't just literally run through Salem to get wherever you need to go, because there is a lot of running in this game. It's not an annoying amount of running where you just run from one objective to the other, sort of like goalposts, because there are breaks you can take while traveling where you can talk to ghosts or help them with their problems, and once you get to your objective, there's a decent amount of gameplay there. But there's still a decent amount of running in this game. To give you sort of perspective, imagine sort of like Resident Evil 4, but instead of enemies, you have crime scenes. I feel the same way about the demons you come across because they hold no importance to the story whatsoever. You're told that they're souls that lost themselves and that's it. For the rest of the game, they just kind of get in your way and you have to navigate around them by hiding in spirit residue and hope they don't sniff you out, or you have to sneak up on them and do whatever the hell this is. I'm assuming ripping their souls apart? Either way, they only existed in the game to provide some sort of resistance, so it wasn't too easy, and it was just kind of annoying or stressful depending on how many there were. Thankfully, once you have the demons' movements figured out because they travel in a pattern, it's relatively easy to take care of them. As for the collectibles in this game, there were just so goddamn many. They're supposed to give you insight to the main characters, such as finding Ronan's wife's memory pieces, or to tell a story about Salem, but I could never find them all. The memory pieces I liked because I am the type of person that likes getting to know characters. I like learning the lore and the backstory for a game. But the other collectibles where they supposedly tell a story about Salem's past citizens, I couldn't find enough of the pieces to even unlock one. There were so many of them that I was never able to get all of them to where I could even unlock one flashback or story or whatever the hell it's supposed to be, but I still got an achievement for getting 150 collectibles. If I found a new item that said collect X more to uncover the story, I just kind of rolled my eyes and forgot about it. Everything in this game looks crisp and detailed, but it doesn't try to challenge next-gen consoles, and that I appreciate because you guys know I don't really like when games do that. I do want to point out that because I recorded the footage on a laptop that had like 4 gigabytes of RAM, it does look kind of laggy, but for the most part, Murdered Soul Suspect ran very smoothly and only had a few frame rate dips. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to say. I mean, I really dug Ronan's character design because he is one sexy but the other characters were just meh. I mean, you have your little spirit guide who's just a knockoff Wednesday Addams, you have the stereotypical cops, the generic rebel teenager that can afford piercings but not a good haircut, and the discount dementors that didn't quite make it to being Azkaban quality. The world design wasn't anything to write home about either. It was a lot of residential buildings, unimpressive museums, and of course your obligatory grungy asylum, cemetery, and creepy abandoned house with an even creepier basement. All in all, I'm glad I only spent about $15 on this game. I enjoyed the story and it was fun to play, but Murdered Soul Suspect I got through in about 7 hours, and I don't feel it's really worth the $60 that I'm sure it first sold for. The design isn't interesting, the soundtrack was mediocre, and the game itself doesn't have a lot of replay value if you're not like a really hardcore Chivo hunter. I do admit this game had great voice acting though. I was really impressed by how talented each of the voice actors were because they really brought their characters to life and they did feel like real people. So would I suggest this to a friend? Sure, I don't see why not. GameStop is selling this new for under $20, and I had a decent amount of fun with the game. I could probably see myself going back to play it 1 or 2 more times just to pass the time. As long as you weren't paying more than that, go for it. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Murdered Soul Suspect. Have you played it? Do you want the knockoff Wednesday Addams to be your spirit guide? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, you can find all of my social media in the description below. And happy unbirthday. I will see you in the next video. Bye! We don't know why Lan's people sent their princess to fight in the Vox Rimphia, or who the Fuganami is, or why her Vox unit branded her cooch. We don't know what the flower of Renee is, or why the title Lagrange